Howdy, folks. Happy Wednesday. The bad weather is continuing in Western New York. Is it still 60 degrees in Winnipeg, Peter?
No, it's no longer balmy.
Okay.
It's cool now.
Okay.
Yeah, it's cool here too. About 45 degrees here.
And Russ, we're live back.
Right.
Russ, you were on your way back from the Beanpot yesterday when you ran into some.
Yeah, I couldn't outrun the bad weather, so I ended up staying upstate New York. But let's talk about the Grammys for a minute, because years ago, rock and roll pretty much was, I want to say, 70% of the Grammy show.
Right.
Now we're at the point where on prime time it's 0%, and it's gotten pushed to the afternoon part where I saw Izzy Hale from Hailstorm was hosting, and Chris Cornell, I guess, won an award.
Posthumously.
Yeah, posthumously. But again, it's maddening to me that there's no rock presence at all on the show for what people see in prime time, and you know that will change when when it just suits them. Like, if Mick Jagger were to pass away, next year's show, it would all be Rolling Stones crazy, right? And so I think there needs to be a happy medium there, because I just interviewed somebody from a band called the Jacks, and they played at the Winter Classic and at the Super Bowl, and they're a rock and roll band, and they are influenced by guys like John Entwistle and Jack Bruce. And so if that does still exist in the world, it should be represented on that show, and it's not.
Well, remember when, and I think it was 2009 when the Police got back together and toured. It was 2007 or 2009. It was the same year. 2007. Same year the Genesis had the reunion tour. Well, the Police announced the tour, and they opened the Grammys. They were the opening song and did I think Roxanne, and everybody went nuts. Honestly, I think that's the last time I remember a rock and roll act playing in the Grammys. Yeah, that's 11 years ago.
There was a tribute, and Mick Jagger was on there. He did "Everybody Needs Somebody to Love." The old whatchamacallit, I can't remember who's it, Magic Sam song. Is that it? No, I can't remember it. Anyway, but he was on there with a bunch of guys. They always have a little of something. It's
they had nothing this year.
It's just gone like that now.
No, it's zero this year.
But you know what? Rock's kind of boring right now.
No, it's really not. It's just
I don't disagree with Peter that. I mean, I'm not that it's boring, but there is such a vintage aspect to it in a way that, and whatever is new is not necessarily. There's a lot of great new bands out there, but are they? Well,
I'm not saying we should do something boring like. I'm not saying we should do something boring like put Springsteen on there.
Right. No, and we're not saying that these new bands need to be on there either. What I'm basically saying is, even if you're in rap, hip hop, or whatever, you were influenced by all of them, and there should always be a presence on the show, and there really isn't anymore. Yeah. And that's the part that's annoying and sort of maddening.
Chat room's bringing up the Eagles in 2017. I do remember that.
Is what they're doing? Are they sort of taking a backseat and letting the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame take the classic rock, like, having those performers, and then not doing anything for the Grammys? I mean, I'm wondering,
there weren't any good acts. There was a female guitarist who was playing Prince that sounded pretty good.
She was really good.
But I didn't.
Was that Greta Van Fleet?
I don't want to see, whatever, Shawn Mendes play 3 songs. I don't need to hear that. I don't need to see that.
I only saw the one, but it was really good.
Yeah, I mean, again, not everything on a show should be a ballad. And on that show, it was either all hip hop or all ballads. And no offense, but pop music isn't 100% of the music in this world. It's not.
Well, let me throw something out there for a second. Just, not that this is.
Throw it out there, because I know it's going to be different.
Not be a music show. All right, then. Thank you. No, I mean, not that this is going to be a music show, but isn't part of this rock and roll sort of has lost its definition? Like what is rock and roll? Like, and I think that's the bit. So I think the Grammys are it's a lot easier for people in the Grammys to go to pop or country or rap or things that actually still have a more defined thing. Rock is very like, is Coldplay rock? I mean, Coldplay is played at
No, Coldplay is not rock, it's pop.
so modern
rock
rock
is
then
pop,
is
and
what,
it's
you know, like
pop is the umbrella, and you have your branches under it.
Right.
right, but I think they would consider Coldplay rock.
No.
No.
Foo Fighters is rock.
Right.
But now, and the problem that we're having this debate here, I think, is why the Grammy people can't get their hands around it. You know what I mean? They can't really say what is.
Well, like Green Day's been on it a million times. They're rock.
So Green Day's rock and Coldplay's not rock?
Correct.
See,
Yeah.
that's a tough line to draw. I think a lot of people.
No. I mean,
I think it's an easy line. I'm not sure. I mean,
I don't think Coldplay's rock either. I'm not saying they are, but I'm just saying that I know that
instrumentation. It's strictly an instrumentation. Green Day is rock, and Coldplay. Coldplay is, it's. I don't know if you
piano-based music can't be rock. Is that what you're saying?
No. I'm just.
Well, then, if Coldplay is not rock, what the heck are Fleetwood Mac?
but I want to give an example here.
You're going to go down that road. You're
Right.
gonna slaughter
Fleetwood
everyone.
Mac is rock because Fleetwood Mac, before they got very poppy, was very hard rock.
Well, it was Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac.
Sure.
But I mean,
Bob
if you go
Welch.
back and think of Rumors is no different than what Coldplay is doing now.
Right.
That's
So
fine,
it is
and I
rock.
actually
It's
don't
soft
like it.
rock.
But
It's soft rock.
But
Yes.
Rumors was all over the Grammys. Here's my basic point, though. Like, as an example, they had J-Lo doing Motown, which is fine. Some people said they liked it, some didn't. Why not have someone like Bono do it, or somebody like that? Like, there's plenty of rock icons that you could have had come on that would be more interesting than J-Lo, but instead they went for somebody that's really good looking and wouldn't wear a lot of clothes. That's really what they were for on these Grammys, instead of trying to really mix it up. Like, if Roy Orbison were still alive, I would rather, no offense to J-Lo, hear Roy Orbison do Motown than J-Lo.
This was definitely the plunging neckline Grammys. I mean, there's
It
no
was.
question about that.
I mean,
And I'm not complaining a bit about it.
Which was no problem.
There's
But,
no representation there. I would have, even if they had Hall & Oates doing it, they did work with the Temptations at Live Aid. If Hall & Oates did Motown, I think that would be better.
now Hall & Oates is not rock.
No, but I'm saying they're closer to it.
It's blue-eyed soul and pop.
Right.
And I mean, to me, like
Motown,
Coldplay is like.
but for Hall & Oates, Motown is not a leap. That's stuff
but it's not something uncharacteristic about the Grammys to blur the lines when it comes to musical definition, because Jethro Tull was a progressive rock band and won Best Heavy Metal. So
right. It's very the point. My point is this is the same fight I have with the prog rock people all the time on what is prog rock and what is not prog rock. And that's always, does it have to have weird time signatures to be prog rock? Does it have to be this, that? I don't know. To me, I have a tough time with the whole concept of defining this stuff. And I think the fact that it can't be defined is wonderful. But I think the issue with that is the Grammys is a thing. It's all about defining stuff. Like the Grammys is like best rap album, best country album.
See, I think it's more than that, Eck. I think it's more than just defining it. I think what they're doing is they are focusing on what generation is watching that show.
Of course they are.
But there are numbers in people of our age watching shows like that. But they don't want to cater. They don't want to cater to them because basically in 20 years we'll all be dead, and the 20-year-olds will be 40.
Yeah.
So I mean, I mean, what you should do is you should dabble in a number of different things, but they've gotten lazy, and all they're doing is spoon feeding Shawn Mendes and Justin Bieber and Miley Cyrus and all these 20s
country in this one. And this is a real
country's big in the southern part. Yeah, and
it's always big though. I mean, it's big now, but it's always big. It's not.
But especially in the southern part of the country, still.
Well, in most of the country, in all the red states, and then anywhere beside the coasts. Country.
Let me give you an example. Thanks to Rolling Stone on this one. I always go back to like when Yes got their Grammy, their token Grammy. It was for an instrumental for Cinema, which is a 1:20 instrumental that was on 90125, a supremely popular album. Wasn't even their best, but it was the most popular, right?
Yeah, right. Wow. Yeah.
So here are some people that haven't won. Joe Satriani, he's one of the best guitarists out there. He's been nominated 15 times never won. How about you have a little Joe Satriani moment where you say, all right, look, this guy's been nominated 15 times. Let's have him on, and we'll do a little retrospective. The Kinks have never won a Grammy. How about have Ray Davies on and play with whoever you want from today, doing a few Kinks songs? Everybody knows these songs. Why not give them a little tribute? Like, there's so many opportunities.
Yeah, you're right. Did you see Drake's acceptance speech by any chance?
I did not.
All right, Drake got out there, and I only watched this because yesterday was a snow day here. And I was sick as a dog, so I wasn't on the show yesterday. But everybody, my daughter was watching the replay of the Grammys because the kids had off of school. And Drake got up there and said, "Listen, I'm really appreciate winning this. I didn't expect to win this." He said, "But for a musician, the award isn't these these very subjective awards." He said the award is getting people
I did hear that actually.
getting people on a Friday night to pay money to come out to a show, get a babysitter, work everything. And that's what it's a speech I've given in my shows many times. Like, thank you.
He's right about that.
And he's right about it. And this is not like, and he said this isn't like basketball where someone wins the championship or whatever. This is a subjective thing that's completely, and I've been up for awards too. I've won awards in different situations and I've lost them, and it's very, not a Grammy of course, but it's like, but it is always we all want to, as anybody, it's normal in life to want to quantify yourself as like, I won this or did this or kind of, but in art in any form, it's really kind of ridiculous.
Okay, but here's another thing that was striking to me. Like, the Rolling Stones are touring. Why didn't you have them on? Tony Bennett was there. Why isn't Mick Jagger there?
Because the arena they were doing was not wheelchair accessible.
Isn't rock too cool for the Grammys though? I mean, honestly, isn't real rock like?
I think it used to be back when Aerosmith didn't feel like showing, and even Green Day got up and left once. If you remember, they emptied their seats. But I think we're past all that. But I think we're at the point where there needs to be equal representation, and it's not even close to equal. That's my point.
Yeah, that's good. Well, maybe we'll move on, but we'll get going here. But it's all valid. It's subjective. It's the awards.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. All right, let's start the show here. Is this Wednesday? Yeah. Okay. Hello, Hockey World. It's Wednesday, February 13th, 2019.
I'm Michael Agello, and I do not need to be reminded that tomorrow is Valentine's Day.
I'm Russ Cohen, and I just say Valentine's Day is a Hallmark holiday. That's what it is.
Yeah. And I'm Eklund, and we celebrate every day that we're together here in our family, not just
there you go. That's what we do too.
And Valentine's Day. It's so
he's right. He's right.
It's the most expensive night to go out of the year. I mean, it's like, why would you do that? You're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. I did change the jersey today for those of you in the chat room. And we are the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday this time to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And we let's see. So last night, a couple big games, some interesting rumors flying around today. The one I wanted to get to first and foremost. Oh man, there's so many different things to get to.
Pick one.
Where are you going to start, Mike? Go ahead. You can start.
Well, I'll just start with one of the ones that you had in your blog today was Radko Gudas.
Yeah.
Because I don't doubt that the Maple Leafs at one time were interested in him. But
Dubas likes Gudas,
What's that?
Dubas likes Gudas.
Yeah, well, yes, and he is pleasing to both the eyesight group and the analytical group, but I'm highly doubtful that in season they will go after Gudas for a couple of reasons. One, the price that the Flyers are asking for is relatively close to the price that the Leafs have been looking to get a top four defenseman with, and they don't consider Gudas a top four. They consider him probably a good bottom pairing guy. Now he's got another year left at $3.3 million. That's a little pricey for what they see him in terms of a role. So I don't think that they're really that interested in Gudas. Interestingly, though, Pierre LeBrun about an hour ago on Toronto radio indicated that Gudas may be connected to Tampa Bay, his old team, because Tampa Bay has three defensemen dropping off at the end of the year in Braden Colburn and Girardi and Strong. He's got another year left in his contract. They know him.
Yeah.
And he would be a good depth guy for them. I don't know who he supplants, though, if they do trade him there, because unless one of those expiring contracts goes the other way as part of the deal.
Hold on. I don't think the Flyers can afford to trade Radko Gudas. Ivan Provorov finally has someone that he's clicking with, and he's finally playing back at the level you want him to. You trade Gudas, you might pull the rug out from under that.
I agree.
Why in the world would you risk that?
Plus, I mean, we've heard ever since of the grand takeover with Holmgren and Bobby Clark getting a little more input that they wanted this team to be more physical, more like the old Flyers. And who on this team, other than Gudas and maybe one or two others, represents that? Nobody. So I mean, unless they get paid a king's ransom, and I don't exclude that possibility because he is the type of defenseman that a lot of teams would like to add, a physical guy, that right-hand shot. But unless they get overpaid, I don't think they're moving him.
I'll tell you what the undercurrent is here, Mike, and this is why I think others think that Gudas might move, because everybody has Sam Morin penciled in like he can make the Flyers right now once he's healthy. We don't even know what his skating will be like when he's cleared to play. Sam Morin was barely good enough to play in the NHL before he got hurt.
Right. Or Myers. Everybody has Myers penciled in too, so it's
right. And Myers is definitely closer, and I think Myers can handle it. But the idea is you still have to have some veterans back there.
Right. You can't have 5 young defensemen. No. You can't have 5 defensemen under the age of 24, which Goss, Provorov,
Mike, we're really kind of losing you.
I'm losing you, Mike.
Why don't you log out and log in?
Yeah.
Having issues there.
I just think that, right now, I think the media has Radko Gudas traded faster than the Flyers do, to be honest.
No, I agree with that. I do. I mean, all I've heard is that, like I wrote that, that Dubas has definitely contacted them about him. The Flyers aren't admitting to being sellers yet at all. So that's
no. Well, they're going to wait till that last possible minute, which I do think is a mistake. I would have already traded Wade and Simmons. They're 6 points out. They're not going to make it. But Simmons is playing well right now, and I would trade him right now because, again, even if you feel like you're still going to stay in the race, how much are you going to be out of the race with Wayne Simmons out of your lineup, really?
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. And I mean, I think they have issues with some of the players not wanting Wayne Simmons to go. That's one of the big problems they've got going on right now.
I'm sure that is, but
I think that you're right in terms of there are so many, like the blog I'm working on for this afternoon is the dominoes that'll fall and how they could fall. And there are so many players. There's a lot of tops. It's rare that we have this many top 6 forwards available at a trade deadline. Sometimes you get 1 or 2, but we have like 5 or 6 legitimate ones, maybe even more. And so the problem with that is there aren't that many buyers. So it would behoove them to trade Simmons early, because there's going to come a point when there's not going to be a team that's going to want to give them anything for Simmons, because there's going to be no one left who has the assets to do so. Once Duchesne goes and Stone goes, and if Panarin goes, and all these other guys. I mean, the Dzingel and Ferland, and just it keeps going and going and going. Mike, your connection is terrible. You got to log out, and log in. Sorry.
I can't. It will say.
I'm right. I think you can, because I'm in here too. So
I just tried to. It said to end the broadcast.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Don't do that. Yeah, that's fine.
Oh shoot. All right. Okay.
Actually, you're okay for this moment.
Yeah. All right. Maybe we'll just.
I switched to Wi-Fi. Maybe that'll work.
Okay.
Okay.
So no. What I was going to say is the injury to Pasternak earlier this week. I mean, should affect what's going on with the Flyers if they were truly one of the teams that was on Simmons, because I think now that's going to escalate Boston looking for a forward, and Simmons would fit that. But again, I don't know, Russ. You keep saying that the Flyers and the Bruins are not.
Nobody there believes it's going to happen either. Nobody. I couldn't find one person in that area who believed that they would trade with each other and that would happen. And the other thing that I kept hearing is, well, they already have players like Simmons, which is true. Backus is a little bit like Simmons, and he's already a little bit slower and older and big, and he's physical. They do have those players. They could use a Panarin more than they could use a Simmons. That's obvious.
Well, this is the funny thing. The name that came up and apparently they were second in the bidding for him last summer, was Kovalchuk. And they would not have to pay a big price to get Kovalchuk because I think LA is just looking to escape that contract. But the concern is that he's 35 years old. And
you have to pay a big price going along here. I mean, it's just like you have to pay a big price in your cap pit and everything like that.
Oh, yes, that's what I'm saying. I mean, you would have to pay a big price in terms of a return.
And getting him is not a big deal.
Right. But it's a question of whether you think that he's got 2 more years of acceptable play at $6.25 million. I don't know. I don't know if they think that or not, but that's one option.
No, it's an option. I mean, and I think that there might be some teams that are interested in Kovalchuk, but it has to be a team that sees him as a long-term solution, not a short-term solution, because
there's nobody that sees Kovalchuk anymore as a long-term solution.
Yeah, I don't think so either. That's the issue, right?
So he'll either stay a King or he'll get moved, and then he'll get moved again. Like at some point, some other team will move him.
Yeah, right.
I see him literally moving to different teams the length of this contract. I can.
I mean, I would compare him a little bit to like Voracek in Philly right now, in the same kind of thing where, you can't move Voracek either because of the contract.
Well, not before the deadline, maybe in the offseason again.
Maybe. I mean, I want to talk about Voracek for a split second because, I mean, this is not trade room related, but I'm at the game the other night, and I'm there for the Pittsburgh game.
Yeah, where were you sitting for that game?
I happened to be sitting in Sportsology's press seat just for fun because my friend was there and he wanted to sit with me, so I'm like, okay, that's cool. So we sat. I was in Russ's seat there.
Security.
I know. People were looking at me like, oh, wait a second, you're not a baseball fan. Yeah. So
wait a second, you got hair.
Yeah. So anyway, the first power play that the Flyers had in that game. Okay, if you want to watch something, you go back and watch this. I don't like to be mean to people, but that power play was the most unbelievable. We counted in the press box 7 bad plays in one power play by Voracek. Now that's hard to. That's hard to do. I mean, really, he considering he wasn't out for the entire power play. Like he had a shift. The second power play unit came out for about 45 seconds. Then he came back on the first power play unit at the end and made 2 more. So it was 5 in the first, 2 in the last. And it's just it's one of those things that just like kills you because he's obviously trying to do too much, or he's just not looking where he's passing the puck, or he's there's all different sorts of things that are happening in different situations. But the real frustrating thing about it is so you get to the you get the score sheet at the end of the first period, and on Voracek's list there, 0 giveaways for the first period. And I just don't understand how giveaways are calculated in the NHL if he had 0 in the first period.
Well, I one of the things somebody was making this point on Toronto radio a couple days ago, and I agree with it. The chip in the helmet and all the tracking of the NHL, it's going to do wonders in terms of calculation of statistics. And one of the things, like the Leafs Rangers game on Sunday, the Leafs purportedly had 56 shots on Georgiev. People were tabulating, like watching the game, and said it was nowhere close to 56 shots. So, right. So some of these things in terms of giveaways, in terms of blocks, in terms of hits, all these things, they should be more accurate going down the line when the tracking is involved. Because
you think so? Giveaways?
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, how's that going to be tracked?
I mean, I don't know the technology.
Chipping your helmet. I mean, your chipping your helmet is not going to tell if you gave the puck.
I don't know the technology, but from what I've heard, it's going to help in immeasurably the accuracy of statistics.
Some statistics, but I mean, I think you're talking about I mean, giveaway is a subjective thing. There's no question about it. Like, did he give the puck away, or was maybe the guy who was passing to blew it, or was in the wrong place? I mean, there are different kinds of things that giveaways could be accounted for. So I don't know how that. I mean, I think that you're going to get a lot ice time. Obviously, you're going to get distance guys travels like we've seen. These things can do really well. But that to me is the issue. Is like I don't see how giveaway is going to matter there. But the giveaways. I mean, don't get off this. But I feel bad because I hate to rip on players. I do. But and it was funny because he just had a rough game all around, and then I tweeted out that he's going to score because he's had such. But usually, if a player plays that terrible for 2/3 of the game, and he did score. You know, he scored the only goal he had.
Right.
You know, and then, you know, and watching yesterday on the broadcast here, the announcers were saying how well he's playing lately, and I just think that that's unbelievable. But
Well,
I don't even want to rip on a guy, but I just the whole thing to me is giveaways are giveaways, you know, like and we got to be fair with them. And I know that hometown teams who are tracking sometimes the giveaways and hits and all that stuff, it's very ridiculous. Like,
well,
I don't know how they come up with it.
yeah. Well, I mean, I know that everybody wants to hear the latest in terms of.
Yeah, we'll get right to that. Sorry. So I just had to note that. All right. So, like, I talk about the concept of dominoes a lot, you know, and this year feels more so than ever because now we're hearing a lot of Columbus and Matt Duchene, which naturally makes you think, okay, they're going to trade Panarin and get Matt Duchene because that gives them something to still be in the playoffs. And of course, they're not going to trade Panarin to Ottawa, so there's a couple deals involved in this, right? So,
sure.
But you know, the more I hear about this, the more it sounds like they actually might be going for both, keeping Panarin and getting Matt Duchene. You know, and I think that I don't get the impression that Panarin, you know, is as high on their radar being traded as everybody makes it out to be. Like, and I know that you're gonna get nothing for him. You hold on to him, and I know that it's dangerous and all that stuff, and you might not convince him to stay. But this is a team I've said many times. This is a team that has not won a playoff series. They are desperate.
I get it.
And
I get that, but yeah, I mean, I heard something similar yesterday, and the report that was coming out about Duchene and Columbus said it was basically if they could get a certain amount for Panarin, that was greater than what they would have to give up for Duchene, then they would do it. If they did not get what they thought was an equal value, then what's the point of making the deal? And then they just keep Panarin. So it's either keep Panarin or trade Panarin and get Duchene, but not. I don't know if both, because really, again, Columbus is life or death to make the playoffs right now. I mean, they're not in a very secure position at this point. So honestly, it's like, I mean, you can say, okay, let's add and let's make a run for it, but you're talking about leading into a complete retool next year. If you have Bobrovsky, you don't have Panarin, and you don't re-sign Duchene if you trade for him. So I mean, I honestly, I can see them making a move where they trade Panarin and then they bring somebody in to keep their hopes alive because they want to win in the first round.
Right.
But I don't think they're winning in the first round if they don't have Panarin.
Well, what's interesting is last night, I mean, I don't know how much of the game you watched, but I watched a little bit of this game, of the Capitals game. And they just dominated the Caps. I mean, it's funny because they really, I mean, the first two periods, the Caps had like 7 shots on goal in the first two periods.
Well, I mean, if they don't work themselves up into a lather for the team that eliminated them last year, I would worry about the heart on that team. And they played well. So, you know, and then I saw Bobrovsky make a big save in that game. So yeah, I mean, they're not. It's not that they're not capable of doing something. They just never have. And again, the risk of keeping Panarin when it's clear, based on the signals that he's sending, that he is not staying there.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you can get and we were talking. Peter and I were talking about this yesterday. When Panarin came out and said, you know, I'm not talking long-term. I'm not talking extension with anybody, even if I'm traded. I'm gonna go to market in July, and that's where things are going to be. You could say that undercut Columbus in terms of trading him, but you could also say that there are 4 or 5 teams that'll be in the bidding for Panarin, and that will ramp up what they get in return. So I think they'll still get a good return for him.
Right. No, I think they will. I think they will too. They will get a trading his rights type thing. No question about it. You know, get something for that at the draft. You know, but I think at the end of the day, they've got to win there. And Columbus just, I just don't think it's a slam dunk. I mean, I know Florida is trying very hard to get both these guys right now, and I know that for a fact is happening. But whether or not they can pull that off or not is the case. Who knows?
And that's the other thing. It's like when Panarin comes out and says what he said, and Bobrovsky has a no-move clause, so you know he can go anywhere he wants to go. if you're Dale Talon, why are you giving up? Because the rumor is that all of a sudden Huberdeau's name has come out in the last 48 hours as being potentially shopped, and I would assume that if we're talking about Bobrovsky and Panarin going to Florida, that somehow the Huberdeau rumor is tied to Columbus. Why are you trading Huberdeau when there's no guarantee that those guys are signing with you?
Yeah, you'd have to have a guarantee. I mean, and if they know that he wants that's a place he wants to play, then they know. I mean, yeah, I don't think they're making that trade unless they can guarantee it. And but I do know that Florida, I think, obviously Talon knows Panarin. He knows all about Panarin, and so he'd have to have some kind of sense as to what Panarin would be willing to do here in order to make that trade. So that's what I think. I mean, I think that you're going to see that. This week is the really crazy week, like we've talked about. We got 2 days left here for really Matt Duchene's thing to figure out, and that's going to play in a lot of different ways because Ottawa wants, I've been told to know by Friday, and if that's the case, that gives them, basically 8 or 9 days to make a deal. At which point,
Duchene or Duchene and Stone
for Duchene.
So
Stone,
what's the deadline for Stone?
I don't even know. I haven't heard. I don't think Stone is talking to them very much right now. I think Duchene is much closer. I think they are just hoping. It feels like they basically focused their efforts on Duchene.
Well, the analysis about Duchene, it came out, and nothing has come out regarding an offer to Stone. But it did come out that Ottawa offered Duchene an 8-year deal at $8 million. And I know that there's been some people out there that said Duchene is not getting that anywhere else. So, it's probably true. But the question is, does he want to go through 2 or 3 years of a rebuild? Because we know it's not going to stop with Stone and Duchene. It's going to be Dzingel. It's going to be Ceci. It's going to be Craig Anderson. It's going to be Pajot. They're going to clear all of them out.
Yeah,
because it makes no sense to keep them around. I mean, you're going to keep a veteran or two there to have a good influence on the youngsters, but you're probably going to clear out most of these guys because they have value, and you're not going to win the next 2 or 3 years.
No, it's really true. I mean, and then they have to make something. They have to be bold about this, and I mean, the idea of keeping all 3 of them is almost virtually impossible. Like that's not going to happen. Including Dzingel, but
all of them too.
Yeah, I mean,
I think it's a guarantee that 2 of them are going to move, and likely that all 3 are going to move. That's the way it looks right now.
Yeah, it seems to be the common feeling out there. I mean, so last night, another team I'm watching really carefully is Nashville right now, because last night Nashville lost again. Last night they lost to the Red Wings. Which is like a big deal, and that's still one of the most hated rivals for the Predators down in Nashville. Like one of the hardest tickets to get is a Red Wings game. From all the years they were, in the same division, and Red Wings fans love to travel to Nashville, so that happened a lot. But we talked about this yesterday. These younger teams that have nothing to play for, and how they usually have terrible Februaries.
Yeah,
continuing on and on and on here with Nashville. I mean, Winnipeg does get the win last night. They did manage to kind of eke it out, right? It was a close game.
Now let me ask you: was there a hearing at all for Byfuglien's hit on Jesper Fast?
I haven't heard anything about that.
Because I got to tell you, when you first see it, it's like, it doesn't look like that big a deal. Byfuglien's a much bigger guy. When you see the overhead, you realize how much he loaded up that elbow to hit him, and he could have literally knocked him out.
Yeah,
and Byfuglien gets away with that a lot. The same way Mark Messier used to get away with the elbow, the same way Chris Pronger used to get away with the elbow. But in this era, he really shouldn't. And if he doesn't even get a call for that, that's crazy.
Yeah, no, I know. And I would have expected it. I would have expected it as well. I mean, we did hear today, I think, that is it true that Malkin got an extra game now on top of this?
I heard he just got 1 game.
I heard he got 1 more game on top of that because of something he said.
Well, maybe that's true, but here's the irony of all this. Now, back in the day, a stick swinging incident would have gotten you much more than 1 game.
Right. Even if it didn't connect.
Even if it didn't connect, correct.
It shouldn't be about connecting.
I know. This one, he only gets 1 because he doesn't have any priors which again shows how much he gets away with. Because Malkin should have priors. Malkin player.
Him and Ovechkin should have priors.
Right.
But they don't have priors because they get the star treatment. And in this instance, he gets the one game. Let's just say, if he would have connected, it would have been Brian Berard and Marian Hossa.
Right. But what if Tom Wilson was swinging the stick and he didn't connect? He would be out for 20-something games.
No. I think he'd be out for 5. I don't think he'd be out. I think
it'd be significant, right?
It would be more significant than Malkin. Yes. Because he has a reputation.
Right.
And it was funny because I heard people yesterday on I think it was this show, the Sportsnet show, Hockey Central, Armstrong and these guys at noon saying that they thought it was ridiculous that if you don't connect, you shouldn't get suspended. And I'm just like, that's crazy. I mean, I don't get that. I don't get that at all.
That is crazy.
I mean,
the intent was there.
Yeah. What are you doing? You're threatening it. It's like, premeditated thought. I mean, you're taking a swing at someone. It's ridiculous.
Well, I mean, I just hearken back to the old Chris Simon, Ryan Holwig incident from years ago, where he basically took a baseball swing and hit Holwig right over the lip.
I remember that. And
I think he got 20 games for that, but he connected.
I may have covered that game, actually.
Yeah, it was at NASA.
That game. Yeah, that was in.
I believe he got 20 games.
Yeah.
And he connected. And it's surprising that Holwig didn't have more damage because it was a swing. It was like a boom. And nothing happened. And I mean, I'm not sure if Simon ever played in the NHL after that play.
I don't think he did.
That game was in New York, and I was at that. I was covering.
It was at Nassau Coliseum.
I was at Nassau. I didn't cover it. Yeah.
I was there for that thing. I remember being there for that. I do remember that.
I'm not sure if that was the same game that Dan Kluche challenged the Islander bench, but it was.
I don't think it was. I think that
was a significant. Or I think it was more earlier, but anyway.
I want to touch on before I got to go, which is pretty soon, and they're going to finish out the show here. Is Dougie Hamilton, who we talked to? I wrote about yesterday.
Yeah, we'll take some questions after I has to drop.
Yeah. So it really, it's funny how things come around. Dougie Hamilton was initially the guy I had rumored that Toronto was most interested in this situation, and that other teams, had a lot of interest in, especially the Islanders. The Islanders and the Maple Leafs have always been the two that I've kind of linked Dougie Hamilton to.
Yeah.
And then that went away for a while, but now it feels like Carolina is liking a lot of their players, and again is trying to consider at least moving Dougie Hamilton, which is such an interesting thing because Hamilton, this would be a lot of moves for Hamilton, really early in his career, which makes you wonder about him. Obviously, that's always something that comes into play when a guy's getting shipped around who's this talented, because he's got all the components of a star. He's a big defenseman who can skate, he can do everything, and
right, which gives you pause if you're a team interested in him, why he would be moved again.
Yeah, why would he be? But when you look at every situation he has been in, all the moves have been kind of odd. Like the Boston thing was just really weird. Like that was just a really strange one because
the Boston thing was and I remember Ty Anderson telling us on a Buzzcast a long time ago. It was basically the fact that he didn't want to stay in Boston,
right?
And to stay in Boston, he was expecting to get overpaid. So they were not interested in paying him what he was looking for, and he didn't want to play there. That was the gist of it.
Right. Then he goes to Calgary, but then you have this, this coach leaves Carolina and goes to Calgary, and then then the coach just really wants to bring Hanifin with him to Calgary, right? And so to make that trade to get Hanifin to Calgary, Hamilton gets moved again for another, So another significant, so both of those moves, although you can say he's been moved twice, there were some reasons behind them that weren't necessarily his fault. I guess you could say he was asking for too much money in Boston. There was other things going on in Boston, but
he's definitely asking for too much money. that's for them.
Yeah,
not for
he's the only player, his RFA is going to ask for too much money. So that's like,
yeah.
But now if he's moved, now you wonder because Carolina, Hamilton should be a good fit in Carolina. There's no reason he shouldn't work in Carolina.
Well, in Carolina, I think it's different because right now, and I watched them play a little bit last night, but intently in a game that they played against Buffalo last week. They're playing 4 right-handed defensemen.
Yep.
They're playing Trevor Van Riemsdyk, Falk, Pesce, and Hamilton. So they have extra righties, and right now righties are, what a lot of teams need. Pesce, I know for a fact that Toronto is more interested in Pesce because Pesce has 5 years at a little over $4 million, and the cost certainty is something that they're looking for.
Right.
And they have enough offensive-minded defensemen. They need somebody who's more two-way, and Pesce fits that rather than Falk or Hamilton. I think the price on Hamilton probably would be cheaper than it is on Pesce because of that situation. Yeah, and then but I mean,
but Hamilton's not a horrible defenseman.
No. I'm not, but he's only under contract for 2 more years at 5.75. So again, in terms of Toronto, I think that difference in price would be a part of it. Also, like I said, they have.
But if you're Toronto, that's this year and 2 more years. That's 3 playoff runs with Hamilton at 5.
Right, but I don't think they want to pay that much. I don't think they want to pay that much in terms of salary for a defenseman. I mean, you're talking about if they lose Gardner and replace him with Hamilton in a trade, you're talking about almost $2 million difference between one defenseman and another. Right. That's too much, especially with the squeeze that they're going to be under with.
But if they could get Gardner for 5.75, I keep hearing they would do it. Like if they could get Gardner for that, they think Gardner's going to want a lot more than that. So
no, he'll want more than that.
Gardner's going to Mars. He's getting over $6 million.
Right. So if they could get him for 5, people say okay, they would consider it.
Right. Right, but I don't think they're going to get him for 5. I mean, there was talk about Pat Brisson being in Toronto last week, talking to Dubas, maybe getting an idea of where they're keeping the lines of communication open. I mean, the only way Gardner stays in Toronto is if he gets a front-loaded deal where the maybe the AAV is spread out over 8 years and they front-load it and give a heavy signing bonus. But I don't think that there's a desire there with Liljegren coming, with Sandin coming, that they're going to pay Jake Gardner, who is a flawed one-way defenseman, pay him over $5 million. I think he's gone after he's an own rental this year.
No, I agree with that, but I think Hamilton is worth 5.75.
Right, but he's not. To the Leafs, he's probably not worth what they would have to give up to get him, which is probably Janssen or Kapanen. They might do that for Pesce because there's cost certainty there. I don't think they're doing it for Hamilton.
Yeah. I mean, cost certainty for 3 years is pretty good, though. I don't know.
Cost certainty for 5 years is better, especially when it's over $2 million or almost $2 million cheaper.
No, for sure. Well, I do have to run, guys. I'm sorry. Kids thing appointment right now that I've got to hit. But, thank you guys for joining us, and Mike and Russ will take you out from here. But I will see you all tomorrow. So thanks very much for coming on. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, we'll take some questions in the chat. Just a couple things from games last night. Russ, I know that there's a little bit of panic going on in Vegas right now. They've sort of slipped back a little bit after having a good run for a while. They lost to Arizona last night, 5-2. Yeah. I don't know if that means all of a sudden they're going to get willy-nilly in the trade market, but I think McPhee, there are some options there for him, and he's got cap room, so I could see them making a couple tweaking moves if it helps them.
Yeah, I think tweaking stuff. I don't think it's going to be anything big.
The Blues have stayed red hot. They win 8-3 over the Devils last night, and I watched a little bit of that game, and there's definitely a lot of confidence going on in St. Louis right now. I think they're confident in their goaltending with Binnington, and even Allen has stepped up a little bit. And I could just say right now, anything tied to Parayko, to Pietrangelo, to Maroon, to anybody, I don't think they're trading anybody. I think they're sticking with that. They're hot right now. They're not going to mess with it, and they're on the path where, if they salvage a playoff spot after the first half,
they might trade someone like Barbashev, right? I mean,
right. If they could actually add to the group that they have and improve
with
their
experience,
chances.
they get someone with experience. They might do that,
right? But we were talking about full out sell
I know.
ago, and that's not happening now. So. Let's check some questions in the chat.
Okay, I actually was trying to look up a stat, but we know what happens when you try and look up a stat. So I'll let the spinning wheel keep spinning, but the problem is I can't get to the chat room.
Oh, okay. Well,
hold on. Unless you could get to it.
No, I'll try. Hold on a second.
Because
Well, while I'm doing that, give us your impressions on the Beanpot.
So the Beanpot was great. It really is. The passion of it is tremendous. People go to my Instagram, they could see like the Blue Man Group was there, and they actually joined BC's band at one point and were playing with the BC band. That was a lot of fun. Caden Primo was great. Like, he's won his second in a row. They're going to go for 3. He's not going to turn pro or anything like that. He also won best goalie, so he was the best goalie, and the MVP this year. Just tremendous effort. It was a good game. It stayed pretty close for a while. BC just didn't defend in front of Joseph Woll. Like, Woll, early on in that game, for first period and a half, Woll was making just some unbelievable saves, and his flexibility has gotten so much better in the last 2 years that I think he will turn pro, and I think the Leafs will just figure out what they're going to do with all their young goalies. But I think it's a good problem to have. I don't think he'll go back because they have Spencer Knight coming in, and he's probably a first rounder this year. So I don't think I got the chat room up, all right?
Yeah, so do I.
Okay. So I think that's pretty safe. So I think Woll will probably turn pro, and David Cotton looked really good too. Like, that was another thing where David Cotton really early on in that game wasn't a factor, but then came out in like the third period, house on fire, got a goal, really started getting the charge going, for a potential comeback. So now that I have the stats going here, what I was looking up is, Dougie Hamilton has 10 goals. Just to give you an example, Giordano's got 12. Gustafsson got 12. Like, 12 is like the high water mark right now for defensemen, and he's got 10.
And Giordano's a leading candidate for the Norris, so we're,
So it just shows you, Hamilton's having a pretty good year.
Yeah,
we'll see what happens with that.
I'm not saying Hamilton's not a good defenseman. He's a very good defenseman. I'm just saying I think that the monetary considerations lean, if Toronto is, and everybody keeps connecting Toronto and Carolina, I think it leans more towards Pesce because of the long-term money. He's at the same contract amount that Gardner is right now.
Right.
$4.025 million. If Gardner walks in free agency, which I expect him to do, and they trade for Pesce, then it doesn't really shake up their salary structure at all in terms of what they're allocating toward defense.
Right. Okay. So questions. Healthy Kev A. That's a name.
Yeah.
Wants to know if we see Vancouver as a home for Carlson. They could offer 7x11. They have that space, number 1 role. I don't think they would offer that much for Carlson. I do think that's a potential spot for Carlson, but I don't think they're going to offer him 7x11. I think it would be more like probably like 5x10. I think that, and yes, they do have the room. I also think Carlson might get an offer from the Rangers. I think Carlson will. Who are you going to say?
No, I don't know the nature of the injury right now, but I mean, I know that like everybody was going hot and heavy about Carlson, after the, like in the last couple months when he was really playing well. After he played Ottawa, he went on this streak where he was scoring at a point per game pace, but he's been out for like 7 or 8 games now. That might give teams who are interested in him a little pause because remember, he's been injury prone the last few years. So.
People used to sign Sergei Gonchar until he was 40, so I don't think it's going to matter. I'm just telling you that's what I think. Antoine, okay.
Let me go further back in the questions. Somebody was asking about any news about Detroit and Nicholas Kronwall. This is from Julian Filion. The indicators are right now that Kronwall's not going to accept the trade, that he wants to stay in Detroit. He's been there his entire career. He may even sign an extension there. I don't think that these, the rumors that have been popping up about him in Toronto, they don't add up, because even though he's a right defenseman, he's a left shot, and that doesn't help the Leafs because they have 5 lefties already. So go ahead, you take the next one.
Next one is Antoine wants to know, like, will Zuccarello, Simmons, Nyquist, are any teams willing to pay a first for these guys? I think you might get a conditional first for Simmons. Otherwise, nobody else is getting a first None of those guys.
Yeah, Nyquist is at like a 2 and a 4, I would think.
Right.
With that.
Yeah. So
Mike Doyle asks, Russ, do you see the Pens going after a defenseman quickly now with Mata being out with a shoulder injury? Now, I hadn't heard about the injury, but Justin
he got it last night.
Yeah, Justin Schultz is coming back pretty soon.
I mean, I heard a report on New York radio today saying that, Boomer Esiason said he ran into Rutherford and he seemed kind of like not happy with his team. It's hard to make a fast trade for a defenseman. If you make a fast trade for a defenseman, generally you're getting a guy who's like a number 5 in the league.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Penguins have enough of those guys. So I don't think there's a fast trade for Rutherford to make right now. I think you have to wait and see what the long-term ramifications are with Mata. And then if they need somebody better than that, they're running out of assets to trade. I mean, let's be real about that. So they've got to hope that this is just like a, subluxation, a sprain, and he'll be back soon. But I don't think they're going to just – I think people have gotten used to Rutherford just going out and trading when injuries occur. But I don't think in this instance that's going to necessarily happen.
Another question from Julian Filion. Mike, would Toronto use the Nathan Horton contract to make a trade? I don't think that'll happen now, but I'll tell you one thing. They've never been able, other than one instance for about a month or two, they've never put Nathan Horton's contract on LTIR. It's right now they're taking the cap hit. He's on injured reserve. He's never going to play again, but it's not on long-term injury to open up cap space. Yeah. Next year, in the summer, I would not doubt that the Leafs make a deal with somebody like Arizona, some team that's trying to get up to the cap floor, and trade the $5.3 million cap hit to somebody and give up a draft pick for them to take that on, because they need that cap space. They don't, if they put it to LTIR, it would open it up, but I think it only opens up a percentage. If it doesn't open up the full $5.3 million, they may try to trade it so they can either fit the bonus overages if there are still those for Matthews and Marner, if they have to put those on next year's cap, or just to open up the space so they can use it. So I think they will trade it, but not right now.
I mean, Steve wants to know if Anaheim be open to trading Manson, then he goes into Toronto stuff. I don't think so. He's under team control. He's got a reasonable contract. Yep. He plays well. He skates well. Like, that's a guy who I think's job is pretty safe, even with the boss behind the bench.
The Ducks, I mean, right now, if they make trades, I mean, looking forward to next year, they've got a young defense. They've got Jakob Larson. They've got Manson and Montour. I think Montour's he still has another year left in his contract. They have Fowler and Lindholm. The name of Lindholm has popped up. Now, I don't know if they're not pleased with the way he's playing, or if they figure they have to pay Montour, so maybe they would trade Lindholm. First of all, he'll get a lot of interest because he's a good defenseman. But sure. They're going to be concentrating on clearing out the big money that they're paying to some of these older forwards. I don't think, unless they use one of their young defensemen as an enticement to dump a Getzlaf or a Perry's or a Kessler's contract on somebody else, I don't see them trading any of their defensemen.
So I guess we'll go with the last question for Esmir here.
Okay.
He was asking, would the Islanders at this point trade Nelson or Eberle at the deadline? I happen to think if it were to come down to those two, that Eberle would be the guy that goes, because Nelson's like a Lou player. He's definitely a Trotz guy.
Yeah.
He's got 17 goals. They still need him. This is not like a team that's loaded with scoring, but I think if they lost Eberle, it's not a huge loss.
Right.
And you might be able to get a team thinking they could rehabilitate Eberle a bit. So I think Eberle's the guy, because I don't think there's any way he's returning to the island. I just don't get that vibe that he's going to go back there.
I don't know how much they get for Eberle. I mean, do they get as much for Eberle as Detroit gets for Nyquist?
They might get more depending on the team, because
of his reputation as being a clutch scorer.
The clutch part, he's still a really good skater. Not that Nyquist isn't, but Eberle's still, a good enough skater. He's got 13 goals. You could make the argument in the playoffs he doesn't have any goals. So
But we're talking about World Junior. We're talking about World Championship.
Yeah, that's where he gets the rep from. I just happen to think, even though Nyquist is the better player, that Eberle, because of that reputation, might be able to get a little bit more. Mike said, he would see, I guess, the Leafs going after Zingle, or the Leafs going after Zingle or Ryan Zingle or Cody Ceci.
Ceci in the offseason, maybe because he's a right-hand shot, but you got to remember, he in arbitration he got $4.3 million. If it's just purely going to arbitration again, because I think he's 1 year away from being a UFA, it's going to be over $5 million. I don't think the Leafs, and I don't think a lot of teams think that he's a $5 million defenseman.
Right. I think that is a part of it.
Now they could the Ottawa Senators could keep him, go to arbitration, and walk away, but then they're losing an asset for nothing. I think they're going to trade him someplace who is interested in signing him on a long-term deal, but I don't think he's going to get like a 6 or 7 year deal. He'll probably get a 3 or 4 year deal.
Right. I'm going to take pity on Hunter, who has signed in on the show late and expects to get a question in here, but it's a good question, so I will take pity on him. He wants to know what would the Getzlaf's value be if he were to be traded. Now, Getzlaf would definitely get a first if he was traded, and he would definitely get a top prospect because he still has a year left on his deal, and if somebody's willing to eat the salary, or if Anaheim's willing to eat like $1 million or $2 million of it a year, they would get a top prospect and a first.
Right. I asked the question about slot in Vegas would include glass, and it would obviously include a first round pick, and if they didn't want to retain salary, it would probably include somebody going back to Anaheim in exchange for Getzlaf in terms of a contract.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it would include a guy like Glass. So a lot of people seem to think will be in the NHL next year.
Right.
So,
I don't think they're going to trade Cody Glass. I just get that feeling they want him. I still think long-term he's the face of that franchise.
I mean, they've already traded Nick Suzuki, so they don't want to trade Brandstrom, and they don't want to trade Glass because then –
if you think about it from a marketing perspective, if Glass is what we think he is, he's their Steve Yzerman, really.
Yeah, he's an original draft pick, developed in the organization. Yeah, they'll want to keep – and he was, 6th overall, so they want to keep him and at least see what he can do. So
yeah.
Okay, we'll be back tomorrow with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast for the abbreviated appearance of Peter Tessier for Eklund. And for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Lagello. Thank you for watching, and remember, it's just hockey.